Hey there, this is Chad Garber, and in this video I'm going to tell you 5 crucial tips when first using the Line 6 HX Stomp. So if you like this video, please feel free to like the video and subscribe to see more of these. I'm doing this in a live format because it's a little bit easier to show you what I'm doing and show you some of the different tips, okay? So the first tip is a simple one. When you first get the Line 6 HX Stomp demo and you turn it on, first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you get the firmware updates. That will save you a lot of problems and a lot of time figuring out problems that you could have otherwise avoided by just downloading the update. They have fixes and they have improvements in sounds and all kinds of stuff. Okay, the second one has to do with IRs. This is my second tip. If you look over here, I'm going to go to one of my presets. I call it Chad's Rockin' 3. Now here's the tip. The tip is if you're going to use IRs, and what an IR is an impulse response. If you're going to use one of these things, you're going to use it instead of one of the cabs built in to the HX Stomp, okay? So if you're going to use one of these things, make sure you just choose an amp and not an amp and a cab. This is a huge problem that I ran into and that a lot of people I think run into is I tried to get when I started my little preset, I put an amp. I chose an amp, but there's at the bottom here you can see amp and cab. I chose an amp and cab, and then I tried the IR, and I was severely disappointed because it sounded terrible. And I could not figure out why, but then somehow I figured out, or somebody told me or something, that if I just chose the amp and then the IR, it will sound good. Because before you were having a cab and an IR, they were kind of fighting each other. But if you don't have the cab, then the IR will make it sound great. Like here's mine, this one sounds great. But if I choose this same amp with the amp and cab, watch how bad it sounds. Ready? Here's without the IR. It just sounded better without the IR, right? Added this. It just messed it up. And that was simply because I was using the amp and the cab. So if I chose just the amp and put the IR on there, sounds great. Here's the amp by itself, which is usually, but that's one thing you'll find out too, is when you do the amp by itself, it sounds pretty bad. But then if you choose the IR, bada bing, bada boom. Let's make sure we're live. Okay, we are. It looks like we got volume. Looks like, yeah. Okay, good. Okay, just making sure. All right, so those are the first 2 tips. So the IRs are cool, and you can download the IRs. You can do a search for them. You can also go to the Line 6 website, and they have some IRs that they recommend. You can even you can make your own. I haven't quite figured out how to do that, but basically an IR is basically just to give you more flexibility and kind of imitate different kind of cabs than the ones that are built into the Line 6 HX Stomp. I think the ones that are built in are amazing, but it's also good to get the IRs as well because there's a lot of those that are amazing. I think this sounds great. All right. Move on. Tip 3. Okay, tip 3 is you can use dual paths. I didn't know this at first. When I first was messing around with the software and the presets, I didn't know you could actually have dual paths. What does dual paths mean? That means you can have two different paths that work together as synchronized instead of in the same line. Like in other words, if you look at I'm not sure if you can even see this thing, it's so small, but maybe we make it a little bit bigger. You can see that's one path, right? And so I didn't know this, but if I let's say I add another amp, put it here, it's going to sound terrible, right? If it actually adds. Terrible! But what you can do is you just simply click on the other amp or whatever else you want to put on the different path and pull down. Watch what happens. Boom! It creates those little lines. Drag it over wherever you want it to be. And bada bing, bada boom, you got dual paths. And the cool thing also is you can decide, you can click on these little circles and decide where you want it to come in and come out. So I'm going to put it before the amp, but before the other effects as well. And so now you have two amps. Not a great sound necessarily because it's but that's the whole point, is you can do that. You can also put it behind it. And I don't know why it's getting too loud there. I'm going to turn that off because it's too loud. But that just shows what you can do. You can drag around. And there's also, I forgot to show you, there's also other things you can configure on that. You can, when you pull it down, you can, if you click on the circle right here, there's things you can configure, like how you want split Y, split AB, split crossover, and the same thing over here. You got some settings you can choose. And so the whole point, though, is... Oops, sorry. So the whole point of the third tip, third tip is that you can indeed use dual paths. I'm having trouble reading my notes. Oh, I know now. My fourth tip is to use, whenever you have to choose a box, always choose stereo. It defaults to mono, and I'll show you what I mean. Like if you go to this thing that I made, the 3 one, because I have another box. Let's say if I want to add something. There's things we can add, like distortion. And if you notice right there, you see it says mono. If you choose dynamics, mono. EQ, mono. Modulation, mono. Delay, mono. Reverb, mono. Pitch, mono. All of them, except for the amps. Filters, wah. The only thing that doesn't have one of those mono things is the amps, preamps, and cabs. Let's see, the volume pan has mono. Send and returns even have it. Loopers have it. So, but my tip is to change that to stereo to get the full effects in stereo. So if you go to distortion, for instance, go to that little box and click on that and click stereo. You got 3 options there, actually. You got stereo, you got mono, stereo, and usually you have a legacy. And I usually choose stereo, but you can, it doesn't really make sense to me to use mono if you're using a stereo sound. And you can also go to the legacy, which has some interesting effects from the past, and I think they're pretty cool. But my main point here is to choose stereo because it's just by default, it just chooses mono, and I think it sounds better if you choose stereo. Now, I don't know when I have to look into which one it chooses by default if you're using the actual device to do this. I have a hunch that it goes to mono as well. And so I'd have to look into, or you can look into how to change that to stereo if you're doing it with a device. So that's the 4th tip. am I playing that little song? I don't know. I just wrote it. I thought it was kind of cool. Fifth and final tip. This is a good one too. The other day, I'll tell you what it is in 1 second. So the other day, I downloaded this preset and then tweaked it a little bit. Whoop, that's not the right one. That's not the right one. This one is. So I downloaded it. So my fifth tip is to download presets from the custom toned in line 6, and not only to use them, but also to learn from them. You can learn a lot about this whole procedure by downloading presets. Not only can you learn from them, but you can also just tweak them. There's nobody has any kind of copyright on the presets and custom and on the custom tones in line 6. And so you're allowed to download them and then just make little tweaks here and there. And then that will also show you how to do it in general. It's like kind of like the 101. It's like learn from others. And so that is a huge and final tip. So you can download. So what you do is you download them and then you suck them into your little presets thing, and then you look at everything they did. Like this is the one I looked at and I tweaked it. And then I've got some of the best sounds. Not all my best sounds, but I've gotten some great sounds from taking other presets and downloading them and then just editing them and learning from how they did it. Like this one particularly, interestingly, has 2 amps in the same path. This sounds like a great strat, doesn't it? And so that's it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any other questions, or if you have any questions or comments, that'd be great to leave them in the comments. And thank you so much for watching again. If you like this video, give me a subscribe and a like. And thank you so much for watching.